Okay, now I do need to add an additional MoGraph effector because I need to animate the text. Okay, so now what I want to do here is I'm going to go back to my layers and I'm going to turn off my plane layer. Now you'll notice that, oh, I lost my cloner. Add this to plane layer. Okay, now it's all gone. Okay, can't see that. Also, if I want to turn my effectors off so I'm not seeing them, I'm going to create a new layer for them, and I'm just going to call this effectors, just so that I don't necessarily see all that stuff in the display. It's just a little bit cleaner. Okay, I'm going to turn the text back on. Now, I don't really like where the text is in its position. It's just kind of sitting there. I really want the text to start to fly in right around frame 150 or so. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the text kind of cascade in letter by letter using the plane effector. Now, I'm going to select MoText, and I'm going to go under MoGraph, and I'm going to select the plane effector, and you'll see the first thing it does is it makes the position jump. That's because if we look at plane effector and go under the attributes, the first thing it does, under parameters, is it moves the position in Y. I do want it to move in Z, so I'm going to just say -500 in Z, and that's sort of moving it forward. You can see, looking at the top view, there's my text, there's my camera. I need it to be past the camera, so I'm going to increase that amount. So it's flying past the camera, okay. Just outside of camera range there, just at about 1070, okay. What the plane effector is it's another word for it would be simple effector. It does a simple thing. It moves things, it scales things, it's plane. It only does one specific sort of trick. It's not like the random effector where it randomizes stuff or the formula effector. It's just very, very simple. Now, if I go to the fall off here, and right now it has an infinite fall off, so it's just pushing all the text out of the way. I want to change this infinite to box. And now it's only going to affect things that are inside the box. And since the text is not inside the box, the text has not moved. It's back to its original position. I'm going to increase the size of the box here just by scaling and dragging. Let's see. Now, if I move this through the space, you'll see that it starts to move the letters, right? Because I'm moving it into the space where the letters are occupied. So what I want to do is I need to look at this at a couple different angles here. I'm going to go up to my front view. I'm going to line it up like this. I want to see where it's lining up, where it's hitting, and I'm going to do like that. Okay. So now, as I move the effector out of the way of the text, where the text should be living, it starts to move into place. You see that? So you get this nice sort of fly-in effect here. I'm going to do one other thing with this. Now, what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to set a keyframe at around frame 150 for my plane effector, and I'm going to rename this type motion. So at frame 150, it's completely out of frame. Let's say at frame 200, I'm going to move it out of the way here, and everything should be in place by frame 200. And I'm going to hit another keyframe. Now let's take a look at that animation. That actually feels a little too fast to me. So I'm going to increase the keyframes, and it's 50 frames, but it has to cover a lot of ground in 50 frames. So I'm going to increase it to frame 230. So now when we run it, let's see here. That's a little bit better. If I go 240, it might even be better. And we have got our summer movie sneak peek flying in the way we want it. I think it looks good. Let's turn everything else on. I'm going to turn my plane layer back on, and now let's preview this animation. I'm going to go full screen here. Now, I'll probably end up making some tweaks to the animation overall as far as the timing of it once I bring it into After Effects. I think I am going to adjust this type motion animation a little bit. So I'm going to say 130. I want it to start to show up a little bit sooner. Now you'll notice that these planes are popping a little bit. They're sort of popping a little bit. And there's a way to sort of smooth that out using one more effector. So again, I'm going to select my cloner object and I'm going to go under MoGraph Effectors and add the delay effector. The delay effector can be used either to sort of smooth out animation or to make things sort of bounce a little bit. And I don't want it to bounce. I just want to use it to smooth out the animation. So that's called blend. If I set it to spring, just so you can see it, you'll see that things are going to be kind of bouncy. So you can see the sort of springiness of it. It's actually kind of nice. I don't really mind it, and I could certainly stack it. I could have it as the spring and then as a delay. But for now, let's just set it for blend. And when you look at it in the blend, you'll see that it just sort of smooths out that movement a little bit. That's kind of nice. Let's look at it one more time here with the blend effector on. I've increased the strength up to about 70. And yeah, it just feels a little bit more natural. It doesn't have that popping to it. I think that looks good. Okay, so now I just want to add some color, some texture to my text here before I turn these into cubes. And instead of creating one from scratch, I'm just going to go to my content browser and modify one from there. I'm just going to assume we're working with the broadcast version here, since most people have that. And materials, and let's just say glossy. And okay, so we've got a whole bunch of colors here, a whole bunch of choices. Okay, and I'm going to choose Car Paint Silver. Okay, and I'm also going to choose Car Paint Circular Glare Red, just to see what that looks like. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add my Car Paint Silver to my text, drag it on there, take a quick render of that. Okay, and it just really kind of pops up that specularity and everything. And then I'm going to add the red version to it, and I'm just going to drop that on, and I'm going to specify that this silver one is for C1. So just for the caps, move that over and take another quick render. Okay, so that's a pretty nice look actually. I think I like the reflectiveness of this red better. So what I'm going to do, instead of using this one, I'm going to delete that one. And I'm going to just duplicate my red one and modify it a little bit. So drag it over. I'm going to change the name of this one to... Okay, so it's all the colors coming from the luminance channel. So let's just go in here and select sort of a very light gray, bluish gray in the luminance channel. And then where else is our color coming from? I see. So we've got to play around with the specularity and the anisotropy here. So I just set that to a bluish gray. Okay, and that really changed the color a lot. And just to make it interesting, I'm going to look at this specularity, and I'm going to give this one sort of a really hot blue. Okay, so that's sort of interesting. I think the color may be a little dark actually. We'll just have to see. You drop that on top because I kind of want those front faces to really pop. Now I'm going to hit C1, so it's just affecting the cap. Okay, capital C, important. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to tweak that a little bit more by going under my luminance, and I'm going to just increase the brightness a little bit just to pop it out, because really you want the face of the text to be a little bit hotter than the background of the text. Okay, summer movie sneak peek. That actually looks pretty nice. So that's fine, and this is just using default lighting. Okay, so these colors look pretty good, and now I think it's time finally to change these planes into the cube. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drag the cube into the cloner and pull the plane out. And now we can, and now if I just add the color to the cube here, turn that plane off. Okay, now we can sort of see the animation. Now, before I render this, I'm going to add a little bit more subdivisions to the cube because I think it's a little bit boring, honestly. It just doesn't have that much interest to it. But in order to get a color going here, I think we need to at least have 3 dimensions. So let me just find a frame that I like here. Looks pretty good. And let's just say we're going to have a goldish looking background. I'm going to go back under my content browser to see if there's anything in here I can use. Let's just take this one and see what this looks like here. This sort of car paint, caramel. I'm going to drop that one in there too just to see what that looks like. Just want to do a couple tests here. I'm going to drop this onto my cube. Now keep in mind that there's no lighting in the scene yet at all. This is just purely the animation and the default lights. It's not great. I'm really not crazy about that color. Let me just try this other one just to see what that looks like instead. Yeah, I'm not really loving either of those. I'm just going to go back to my blue color here and modify it. So I've got my blue color and I'm just going to open this up here and let's see. Let's just make it sort of a steely gray color with a little bit of blue in it. So let's just bring it into somewhere around here. And I want to add a bunch of reflections. So I'm going to say reflection Fresnel. I'm going to tweak this so that it's not quite so black on the end here. Just to change. See, this way, when I change that, now the center is more reflective too. If you see that change there, if I go back to black here, we sort of lose that reflection right in the middle there. If I pump it out a little bit to gray, it gives us a little bit more reflection. Now, there's our reflection. I like a little bit of blurriness in these kind of situations because if our reflections are really sharp, it's just a little bit too much going on there. So let's just say 15% blurriness, and that will soften it up quite a bit. I think I want to add a little bit of bump, a little bit of noise map on the bump. So let me say noise, and obviously that's going to be way too much, so let's just bring it down to like 2. And I just want to take a quick render because these are the strength in all these settings are always affected by the scale of your scene. So let me just take a quick render here and see what we have. So we're getting a little bit of sort of bumpy displacement. It's really more than I want. I don't really want it to feel that sort of wavy. So what I need to do here is I need to change the global scale. I'm going to bring it down to like 20. Okay? I just want a little bit of sheen to it. Right? So that's kind of more what I'm looking for. That's not too bad. And let's look at the specular, and I want to crank this specular up a little bit. I want a little hotter. Yeah, see what happened there? I cranked up the height there of the specular, and all of a sudden our highlights are getting a lot stronger. Let's just take a look there. So now as this waves by, you're going to get more specularity there, a little bit more action there. Now, this again brings up, I want to subdivide this cube now. And I just want to add a fillet to it. And you're going to see these are all going to turn into chiclets here. Chiclets, right? So that's a little bit rounder than I want it to be. So I'm going to say the fillet radius is going to be 5. And the subdivisions are going to be, adding 5 subdivisions to that's going to really slow down the render. So let's just say 2. Now you see that's kind of interesting what happened, but I'm going to just take a render of this and see what I get. And it's actually kind of nice. I'm going to leave that alone for now. I could really get in here and really tweak this like crazy, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. What I am going to do here is I'm going to go to sort of my last frame here. Before I do any lighting, I just want to take a quick snapshot of this to see what's happening with my colors. Yeah, and this is actually, I'm glad I did this. These colors here, the cap of our text is a little bit too sort of cyan colored. And I really like this sort of slate gray, so I need to tweak this color a little bit. I'm going to just double click on that, and let me look at the colors here. I think it's all done. Yeah, they've done it all here. So what's happening here is you've got this little bit of green in here. I'm going to tweak that out. So I'm just going to move that over a little bit into the more blue colors. And really what's happening, it's in our specular. So I'm just going to move these over a little bit. So push this a little bit more towards red, and push this a little bit more towards red, even though it's mostly gray. And let's see here, shader, okay. Now, also, I want to see, does this have a specular? It does, and with this specular here, I want to do the same thing where I kind of crank up that up a little bit, and let's just take a quick render here. Okay, it's definitely more where I wanted it to be. There's almost not enough separation here, but I'm actually fine with this for now. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to set up a couple of object buffers just so that I can tweak these colors in After Effects once I get to that point. So with my cube selected, I am going to go Tags, Cinema 4D Tags, Compositing Tags, and I'm going to slip here and go Object Buffer, and I'm going to say Object Buffer 1 for my cubes. And then for my text, I'm going to use another tag. I'm going to go Compositing Tag and Object Buffer 2. So now I can separate those out in After Effects when I'm ready.